about that.
All right, good morning again, as it's still morning for me, but good afternoon to Pegasus. How are you, buddy? I see you're already here. So I did get a chance to check the Informant miniatures collection, the first edition of the miniatures. Very impressive. And there is a game from 1840 from Howard Staunton in the miniatures department. He does manage to win it, so we'll get to that one shortly after this one. I'm using the largely out-of-print Howard Staunton English World Chess Champion. As he was a pre-World Chess Champion, no one was the official World Chess Champion until 1886, when Howard Staunton defeated Zukertort. Sorry, I lost in thought there as I was reading. Repair does come up as the third game in this book, so we're going to see it as annotated by Informant as well. So in this particular case, do we have our timer showing? There we go. Get our timer up. Where's our timer? It's got the settings showing. There we go. Let's get the settings out of the way. And in fact, I'm going to broaden that up just a little bit as it is candidate move time. If I can bring it down just a little bit. Candidate move time. Fair, fair, fair enough. All right. We are almost in business here. So in any event, Howard Staunton lived in the heart of the Romantic era of chess. He was the strongest player in England for a good period of time, and he won the London tournament of 1843 off the top of my head, not having read the Wikipedia page as I rushed right into this. And I'm going to do this right up until, actually hoping to start a little bit earlier, but right up until the Super Blitz Arena of Offerspiel. And of course, we will touch upon this later we will touch upon this possibility of adding to this study much later throughout our regular streams, with full credit to Pegasus, of course. Now, when I'm teaching younger players, the youngest of players, of course, we start off with the 4 knights game. Oh, I see. It's showing me the best move arrow, so let's not have that showing necessarily. Best move arrow, of course, is indicating bishop to b5, which is the era of the Ruy Lopez, which is the modern era. We didn't really appreciate that in the Romantic era, as Howard Staunton takes over the center. Now, the 4 knights game is perfect for beginners because it really exercises the natural, comfortable squares for the knights. And, of course, next up might be the Italian game with bishop to c4. But if we want to really add a bit of cutting edge to our game, then we might actually go for the Scotch Gambit, which carried quite a bit of poison in the days of very little opening theory, right? WTF Donnie, how are you, man? Great to see you. I am elect. I love it when Ben Johnson did that. I think he talked him out of saying that, the Perpetual Chess Podcast. I know our Perpetual Chess Podcast may have scrolled off as I promoted it in the starting screen. We'll get it up here one more time to check out the amazing Perpetual Chess Podcast. I believe Ben is in the city right now. Not sure if he's playing at the Marshall, but I'm wishing him luck in any event. So there are many ways to meet this particular opening. For example, you could have the passive way, you could have the super counterattacking aggressive way, or you can have the bishop to c5 possibility, which runs into c3 with the threat of bishop takes f7 and queen to d5 check. Or you can play the 2 knights defense as the amateur in this particular case does it here. Now, interestingly enough, this to me is probably the best response, and it really depends on White's answer. There are only 3 moves here for White that are worth a darn. And Staunton does not play any of them. So in order to get our candidate move venture started, let's see if anyone wishes to get the candidates started as we start our 45 seconds, just to throw out 3 candidate moves for White in this particular position. Now, Stockfish's 3 candidate moves for White still do not include Howard Staunton's move, so you can tell how theory and the purposefulness of moves and the concept of strength behind the moves, given the ideas, has affected us in the modern age. And of course, from the first one, you should try. I should give it 60 seconds rather than 45 seconds, but I want to get more games in than meets the eye. Howard Staunton, the English World Chess Champion. Bobby Fischer is quoted on the cover as saying, Staunton was the most profound opening analyst of all times. Playing over his games, I discover that they are completely modern. And that's quite a laudable accomplishment. Absolutely, c3 would be one of my candidate moves as well, perhaps. But given the fact that the e4 pawn is hanging, it's probably questionable. We can't quite get away with it here. Knight to g5, believe it or not, is Starkist Tuna's best 3rd move. Castling, of course, is standard, and probably the move that I would play until I saw this assessment. Probably one of the reasons why I have since shelved Chris Baker's startling chess opening repertoire in a certain move order. But e5, of course, leads to the 2 knights defense. And Howard Staunton, of course, goes in a completely different route with bishop to g5. Now, of course, this is not necessarily a tournament game in 1839. So it goes without saying that he is winging it off the cuff and testing his opponent's ability to handle an open, maybe a non-theoretical move. It's possible that he did not want to play theory because his opponent only knows theory. Now, bishop to bishop 4. I have to actually do a little bit of translating here. It's not bishop to b4. And Staunton sets him up for a little bit of a trap now. This pawn can't be taken, of course. It would lose a piece to knight takes e5 with the threat of rook e1. But it does give black a chance to reposition himself for a latent kingside attack involving bishop h3. But yeah, e5 and castles, definitely the moves. e5 and castles. Castles, knight takes e4, according to Starkist Tuna, is microscopically better for black. Go figure. And only now does white play c3. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that the position is in our favor, but we do have the maximum amount of development for our pawn. And it is hard to believe that we're only down one pawn in this position, given the placement of the knights, the aggressive bishop. The rook's able to step in at any moment. Knight to d5 lingering in the air. Queen to d5 possibly lingering in the air. Needless to say, black does know something as he castles. Or she. We don't necessarily know what. Looking for quotes that were mentionable in this particular book as this particular book, written by Keene and Coles, Raymond Keene and R.N. Coles, refers to the history of World Chess Championships and about Howard Staunton not necessarily being one of the strongest world champions. I'm paraphrasing quite a bit there, as the wording for them is much, much stronger about his strength. I disagree, given Bobby Fischer's quote that we heard before. So in this particular position, it would be very likely that moves other than knight to d5 are much better. For example, bishop d3, hassling the queen. Knight h4, possibly hassling the queen as well. And the move knight to d5, which targets the main weakness in caveman fashion on c7. Black, of course, realizes this is attacked. I call it caveman chess because when you see a caveman walking down the street with a club, you are obviously going to cross to the other side. So therefore, chess needs to be played at a much higher level than that. You need to have more than one idea, more than one strategic concept behind each move. If you want to be a success, you can't just attack something, hope they don't move it, which is the lowest level of chess, and take it. So for the most part, the knight on d5 is, of course, threatening the queen. And Howard Staunton sets about removing the defender, which, of course, this tactic is slightly easy to dodge. And now black has a few choices. He doesn't choose the strongest one, but he chooses the one that is most logical, counterattacking the bishop. Unfortunately, counterattacking the bishop also causes a little bit of consternation for the black queen, as the black queen now has to find a better haven for safety. And it seems as though black is going to have a great deal of difficulty developing his bishop on c8 and getting his pieces out. So here we go. Candidate moves for white on move number 13. Candidate moves for white on move number 13 for Howard Staunton. And you can imagine that there are only a few ideas to be considered here. And ultimately, at the start, Howard Staunton had played the strongest move, according to Starkist. But this move is waffling about, as there are 3 good concepts in this position for white. And again, the purpose of finding candidate moves is to not necessarily determine the best move in the position, but to merely scoop up, round up all the possible good moves. And once you have all the good moves, you may then start comparing. You may then start comparing those moves to find the best move. So the 45 seconds is merely just to say, all right, our knight on d5 is hanging. What are we going to do about it? Where are the weaknesses? What is our opponent's idea, i.e. queen takes d5? And what is our worst placed piece? So if we could improve our rook on a1, I would. We could improve or find a square for the queen or rook on f1, I would. And as it turns out in this particular position, Howard Staunton chooses what seems to be waffling between knight f4 and bishop c2, third move being bishop to b1. Not that hard of a concept, but we're going for the very primitive. I would like to take over the opponent's position and checkmate them. I would like to go to dinner early tonight. The opponent, of course, completely unfettered by this, bothers the knight into the second most important square that we've already discussed, which was knight f4. And of course, the opponent does have a plan to dissuade Staunton from being able to play queen to g3. g3. And then now he goes a little bit off tangent. Candidate moves for white. Let's do this again. The main idea here, I'm going to change it, by the way, to 60 seconds. Because I think 45 seconds is just too short. You should always take a minute to decide what you're going to be doing in a position. After all, Staunton did not find the best move in this position. Even though I think the best move in this position is distinctly linked. And if you were to match wits with Howard Staunton, this would be a good starting point. Dark Myth a long time ago did take on the chessable task of trying to convert these studies into chessable books. And that certainly could be the case, as it turns out. In this particular instance, knight to g5 is the best move, interestingly enough. Knight to g5, and of course we would like to get our queen to that diagonal, so maybe bishop to b1 was a more optimal square. Rook to b1 should also be considered, but Staunton comes up with a highly imaginative sacrifice, which pretty much puts the idea of winning this game in doubt. And the opponent, of course, does not accept the sacrifice. The opponent plays king to g8, which makes everything possible, obviously. The possibility of accepting the sacrifice after f takes g6, knight h4, queen trying to come to the rescue along that diagonal. I take it back, queen to bishop's 4, not queen to bishop's 5. Queen to bishop's 4. Queen to queen 3. Pawn to queen 4. Knight takes. And of course, if this were to happen, then we have a perpetual check situation. Arising. And if pawn takes knight, knight h4, king to g8, queen to d, queen to queen 6, knight to bishop 5, queen takes, he's managed to come full circle. We can see that there are a lot of threats here. The position is roughly level. So had he accepted the sacrifice, there was a lot of play, a lot of compensation, but it was nowhere near winning. Unfortunately, the opponent does not accept the sacrifice and walks right into a nice, or what should be a nice, miniature to a great extent. First, queen to d6, but obviously we can begin the whole process again with Pegasus's move, threatening and threatening some more. You gads. Not that easy to find some refutations here. At all. Quite rich. Yeah, knight to g5 again, indeed. Probably would have been the shot. Instead, after this move, queen to queen 6 puts the win once again in doubt. Queen to bishop 4. And at long last, we drop back for a very decisive attack. This is perhaps the only option for the opponent. To try to batten down the hatches. And at long last, knight to g5. A quiet retreating move to set up even more dastardly, diabolical ideas of winning material. Since we've sacked a piece for like almost 0 pawns, in fact we're down a pawn. We've sacked a piece, we have no pawns. We gambited our way toward this. Howard Staunton, pretty impressive, I have to admit. Oh, thank you, hon. Aha. Check the bottom of the plate before I put it on a book. We might need to lengthen the 60 seconds. We might need to lengthen the 60 seconds. Yeah, knight to g6 was nowhere near as good as Pegasus's knight to g5. But remember, we're going all the way back to Staunton's youth here in 1839. If he was a young man. Let me just take a quick peek at the where was my 1 second here. He was born in 1810, so he was 29 years old when he played this game. I mean, he was 29 years old when he played this game. Thank you, Pegasus, for the 10 bits and the applause. But I mean, we're just warming up to Staunton style here. This is like, it's brutal to try to defend this. Is it going to be that bad? And how does he escape? Because the game does go on. So after queen to rook 5, bishop to d8, black is finding the best possible defense. Check. Forcing, forcing, forcing. F4. Bishop h7 check. E6. Very trick. Yeah, nice food indeed. We have a relative waffle with blackberries, strawberries, and a smidgen of, I don't even know what kind of syrup this is, but it's very healthy syrup. It's not real syrup. I'm trying to think of what it's called. I can't think of it to save my life, but it is. He played the applause for the food. As I often go the morning without eating because of the streams, yes. Thank you. How does white add more pressure? Well, white is clearly better at all these. Of all the moves, f4 may well be the best. Bishop h7 repeats the position. Staunton plays second best or easily one of the best moves in the position by playing knight to h7. He's simply threatening to bring in more stuff if needed, if the rook were to move, I guess. So, bishop knight 6, knight to rook 7, bishop to king 2, rook on a to d1. So Staunton did know how to bring all of his pieces to bear. Black improves his worst placed piece. White keeps improving. Very quiet build up of the attack, and now we might even be ready. Is this real? Did he do it? Not yet. First he locks down on the center, but rook to d4 is an option. Crossing and covering. Rook takes e5 is perfectly logical. Staunton goes for the immediate recovering of some of his material after knight takes rook. Oh, I apologize. I apologize. Bishop e7, he did this first. He did much of this first. Let me just make sure that I insert that properly. So it was rook on a to d1, knight to c4, rook on f to e1, d5, e6, knight e5. And does this fit? It does fit. Reading the descriptive notation from a very old book. Not so wise, right? And here, on move number 34. Candidates for white. Yes, we already discussed that. That is certainly perhaps the best candidate, but what move did Staunton play? We're matching wits with Howard Staunton. Oh, I didn't start the timer. I realized that. Let's get the timer going before I forget, and I try to get in a little bit of this before it goes completely cold. We're juggling too much. Absolutely. Besides the strawberries, I didn't realize there were also raspberries in there. So Staunton chooses the ever so dramatic rook to d4. And obviously rook takes e5. Bishop to c5 comes into play. And perhaps Staunton just thought this was going to transpose, because in this particular position, Starkist believes that rook to d4 is the best move for white. Believe it or not. Along with everything that No Nonsense wanted to play. And e7, exactly. Possibly e7. I'm glad I didn't do any candidate moves with the wrong move order. I hate when that happens. Certainly e7. In one of those lines. Not now. I don't see it now. So e6, knight e5, rook takes e5, bishop c5, bishop h7 check would be natural. Staunton, however, did play rook to d4, rook to queen 4. Remember, this is a casual game, so we can't hold ourselves to the absolute. But we're starting off at the very beginning of this book. Mainly because I want to, and I've always wanted to, and I've not gotten around to this book. And here we are, thanks to we'll fix this move order later. I'm afraid that I may or may not have fudged it up. But he does still have rook takes e5. Bishop takes. Wow, it's very hard to choose between all of these moves. Staunton's move, very poetic as it is. Debating on whether or not I quiz. I am going to quiz, yes. Staunton. How would Staunton finish off this position? There are three different moves. One of them fell away. When I first started the quiz, there were 4. Three different moves, which lead to the optimal result. But what could it be? What could be? Staunton chooses rook to g6, although rook to g8 check and rook to g5 check also prepare the same idea. Rook to g5 is the second best move in the position. Rook g8 is the third best move. And the move that Howard Staunton played, forced resignation, as it is the best move in the position. Rook to g6 indeed. Quite crazy. Quite crazy. So sit. Not yet. Staunton Paper coming up next. Now this is part of a match, I believe. This and the next game that we're going to see. William Hartston is one modern player who does not recognize Staunton's real stature. More about this match later, as we're going to go into another Romantic era opening. One that I do like to play. You know what? I haven't really played this very much. But in his notes to one of his own games, this opening, he wrote, this is William Hartston, by the way, English author and I believe an international master. With this opening, he wrote, played by Larsen with success from 1964 until he discovered pawn to b3 on the first move. Philidor rated this opening as the best white can select. While Staunton wrote of the move that 2 king bishop to queen's bishop fourth is perhaps the very best the first player can adopt. And with Philidor, Staunton, and Larsen on our side, who needs theory? Now, Keane and Coles actually write about this move going out of fashion. It is very logical, of course. d4 is the best move in this position. Following up on our previous move. Interestingly enough, with the move d6, I would like to believe that black is trying to hold the center. Unfortunately, we can't retreat our bishop and answer d takes e5 with knight takes e4 because of the threats to f7. Just don't have it. So therefore, pawn takes pawn, bishop to b4 check, bishop d2. All of these moves give white an amazing lead in development. Candidate moves for white here on move number 9. Candidate moves for white. There are several moves that can vie for the best spot in this particular position. Again, the idea is not to find the best move, but try to gather all the good moves. And really only a hair's breadth separates them as they've been waffling back and forth in Stockfish's repertoire. 3 moves are better than the others. What do you think, Pegasus? For one, we can attempt to achieve an outpost square for our knight or to try to upset the apple cart on the kingside defender with e5. Secondly, we might have to deal with the counterattacking move d5. So Howard Staunton actually chooses bishop to d3, refocusing on the 8-7 square, and this actually is the best move according to Starkist. Starkist believes that piece relocation. I'm going to put that one in while I'm at it. There are way too many exclams in that statement. I'm going to have to re-edit that one. Yeah, c6, rook to e8. Well, it was... and knight takes e4. Well, it was white to move. So, as it turns out, that is always an awkwardness. I'm going to always have the moves for white, unless I flip the board on you. I would flip the board if it were black's turn to move. But needless to say, black does not find the best response. He is going after bishop, probably. Removing himself from the pin, avoiding any hazards on that square. And now, has white truly not castled yet? White has truly not yet castled. I have to always check this move order because they fooled me once already. d5, e5. Bishop takes, knight takes. And knight h4 going for the weakness on f4. Knight h5. Sorry, as I translate. And Staunton does go for the restriction of the knight, but does allow some combinational possibilities on that side of the board. What is up with this ability to not castle? Was it not just Steinitz who left his king in the center, but all of them? Position is hugely favorable for white right now. As white probes the weaknesses. Black doesn't seem to be a slouch. He's gotten all of his pieces into the game. He may or may not be planning on moving his f-pawn. No, I did not do that, did I? Rook to bishop's 1. Rook to bishop's 1. Not rook to b1, rook to bishop's 1. I can only apologize. g6, b4. Queen d7, queen d2. King h7. Castles. And rook on it. A to e8. Sorry about that. Was the bishop sack sound before? Yeah, let's take a look at that. Thank you for chiming in. I don't necessarily know that it was sound. Let's take a look at right before. With here, g3, g6. It's just, we don't have enough attackers to back this up. We are getting 3 pawns for our piece, but it's just... Yeah, we're not getting enough for it. Yeah, not getting enough for it. In a way, no nonsense. Even Garry Kasparov and almost every world champion, they really take their time preparing and building and building and building before they sacrifice anything. This is why David was criticizing Apostolet for sacrificing too early before all of his pieces were in the game. So therefore, he's going to probe some weaknesses, get his pieces into the game, and on move number 19, there are a lot of possibilities, such as b5 or even bishop to b5 to cripple black's possibilities. But Staunton chooses the rook lift. Either the rook lift to shift or the rook lift to double. We're about to find out which one he intended for the most part. So we have knight to d8. And at long last, black tries to stymie white's attack, and he's got his knight ready to blockade on the optimal square. And should we try to match wits with our opponent, or find the best move, one or the other? Candidate moves for white on move number 22. Candidate moves for white on move number 22 here. And of course, what Staunton played may not be what Stockfish or Carlson would play. We should do a game show. I should actually get a score points for everyone in this particular scale, because No Nonsense, of course, chose the move that Staunton played. This is not the best move in the position by far, but of course that's the move that struck me. So of course when I see it, like the fourth or fifth best move in the position, Queen E2 is a very keen idea. Absolutely. Interestingly enough, Stockfish takes the slightly more cautious side of it with bishop to b1, or king h1, or bishop c2, in order to be ready to transfer the pieces to the king side after g4. So in other words, preparing rook g1 perhaps, or bishop c2, bishop b1, preparing rook to h3 or rook g3 perhaps, because after the move g4, black does not have to capture. And it would be nice to have brought across our stuff a little bit earlier than this. Now, once again, we have several candidate moves. Candidate moves, of course, are bishop takes, knight takes, or queen e1. I guess queen f2 as well, just to keep that pawn from being left out of the lurch. Bishop takes, knight takes, or queen e1, queen f2. And Staunton chooses the second best move in the position. Or is it? 1 second here. The Stockfish has shifted quite a bit since the last time I looked. Yeah, Stockfish believes we should capture with the bishop right away. Staunton, however, captured with the knight. And then shifted his king into the corner, as he probably should have done this before playing g4. So now rook on bishop 3 to bishop 1. He's given up on the idea here. But rook on f to c1. What's going on here? Rook on 3 to bishop 1, as opposed to rook on 1 to bishop 1. Who's planning on breaking in or fighting for, or definitely wanting to contest the G file. Queen to king bishop 1. Rook on king to king bishop 1. Rook to king's knight first. And knight to e6. Well, this move, trying to remove the defender of f5, is pretty logical. And white does get control of the open file. And black is defending admirably, as his position is almost level. The position has somewhat petered away, as it turns out. What was it that petered away the position? Was it really that bad to take with the knight in this position? After all, we had a nice plus in this position. Knight takes did whittle away at it. King to h1 kept it. But this move, relocating the rook, while Stockfish believes in bishop c2 in order to transfer the rook across. Bishop c2 or bishop b1. Stockfish also believes in creating the weakness with the minority attack, b5. But instead, he chose rook on 3 to bishop 1, and the position's very close to being level. Again, not too late to go for the caveman-esque attacking of the f5 pawn is starting to hurt white. So king to h1, queen f2. White still has a small preferential advantage. That's about it. So black, according to the authors, could have probably gone for some simplification in this manner. Notice we're not really losing that pawn because of the counterplay, right? After all, there's a lot going on here. This position is as even as it gets in this match. Can't trust the annotations of these guys, though. So, as it turns out, queen h5, bishop e2, now white is the one who is invading, which is good enough. Queen h4. Yeah, absolutely. Only move. there's no pressure here. But let's just go back for a moment. This position was totally level right up until bishop e2. Queen h5 deserves the question mark. Given the chance, he definitely had to play rook to g8 to hold this position level. Instead, he played queen h5. And life is not so easy for him anymore. Honestly, let's check it out. So move number 34, bishop h5. Black decides that if we're going down, we're going to go down with extra material. Do I have the move order wrong, or don't I? Let's go for some candidate moves for white. Maybe for one of the last times in this game. It's one of those moments where I wish I'd had time to prepare this like I did with Kravnik and others, where I had a chance to go over the games a little bit further in advance. I was very happy to get Staunton in. Jim Poole, how are you? Exactly. White to move in this position. Someone must have an idea on how white should proceed here. I'm a little bummed if no one gets it, because the authors of the book mentioned that Staunton's move is not quite as accurate. And whatever year that they chose to analyze this, when was this book published? There's a number 17 on this book. Who's the publisher of this book? British Chess Magazine, 9 Market Street, St. Leonards-on-Sea, Sussex. Published in 1975. That is quite crazy. Apparently, although Staunton actually played, I think everyone saw me actually play it, or almost play it. Rook to g6, rook to knight 3, let's just put it that way. I mean, this is certainly a clear advantage for white, but the move bishop f7 knocks his lights out. But rook to g3 does not completely knock his lights out. One can actually notice that he's not allowed to take with the queen because the queen takes h6. And he's not allowed to take with the rook either because of queen to f8. And this move also interferes with the possibility of, and establishes the possibility of queen f6. There's literally no way to stop this devastation from happening. Quite crazy, no nonsense. In any event, after the move rook to g3, which, you know, I wouldn't give it a full question mark, but he misses a decisive win. And black gets to play g6. And the previous note still applies, as no nonsense is already noted. Howard Staunton's particular move, bishop to g6. And now he actually takes advantage of everything that black has in this particular position. Pardon me. Now the score sheet ends here saying and wins, but there's quite a bit of stiff resistance to be found according to the authors. 1 second, I just make sure I put that in there, 1-0. Quite a bit of stiff resistance to be found after knight e6. Preventing queen to d8. Even though white should be able to win the game, white should have played queen to d8 straight away, which is pretty logical. And now that way he can actually start pestering all of these pawns and trying to promote his pawn at the same time. Steinitz prepare. Now we are finally, at long last, into informant territory. We're finally into informant territory. This is game number 997 of the Informant's Chess Miniatures as well. Just going to confirm that this is the same game, because this one goes 35 moves, and this one goes to move number 19. It's the same opening. Queen. It's not the same. So which one do we do? We've got another game for the match here. The Scotch Gambit. And we have one there. And we already quizzed on this to a certain extent. Or we already discussed it to a certain extent. For whatever reason, Staunton is really super aggressive in this position. C2. Queen takes. G6. Everything appears to be protected. White does have a small edge. I don't mind you seeing that the computer evaluation, so everybody can see it, or everybody can question what's going on, just in case. With your attention at chess games, I tell you, it's messing with me right now because it's been a little while. How many games are in this one? Do I dare do the whole kit and caboodle? Because there are some game fragments. There are 59 games in here. Wonder how many I can put in a study. I believe I'm allowed up to 64 games, so I think we're good to try to put all these games. Oh man. I have to answer that question that just came up on WhatsApp in a moment. I will answer that question in just a moment. Let me just get to it. So here, queen takes d3. I'm sorry, d6. a3, bishop a5, bishop b4, bishop to b6, bishop to b2. Pretty logical. Staunton improved on this in a game in 1853 by playing queen to b3 instead of bishop to b2. Not sure how much of an improvement that is, but again, we are going to be matching wits with Staunton. Candidate moves for white. I need to see if I can find the answer to this. All right. At least we got the answer out, even though I'm lacking some coffee. Now, the reason why I like to quiz on certain positions like this is that matching wits with Staunton does not necessarily mean that we are going to find the computer's best move in this position. The magic wand. Thanks, Tom. I wish I could transfer some of my emotes over to WhatsApp. Queen to b3 objectively is one of the more powerful moves here, absolutely. Queen to b3, absolutely. What's the matter, Pegasus? I mean, the logical moves here, the three best moves, according to Starkist, are knight c3, knight on b to d2, and h3. I know that's what Pegasus's expression is all about. I'm positive. I'm positive that that's what it is. There's a hype train? What are you, nuts? Oh, you're a hype train conductor. Good for you. That is pretty cool, that little emote added on. But, of course, Staunton goes balls to the wall with e5. Again, knight to c3, knight on b to d2, or simply h3, just restricting that bishop, are better alternatives. Instead, Staunton, showing his youthfulness in 1940, remember he's only 30 years old, Back then, this was quite something because they didn't let kids play chess back then. Chess was just too much of a mature game. We'll compare this one to the next one in just a moment. But after the move e5, I actually wasn't entirely certain that he wasn't going to try to get even more out of it, but knight takes e5, knight takes, bishop takes, castles for black. Now we have the bishop on the other side of the knight. Apostolate would really appreciate this particular knight maneuver. And of course, he would also be building up on it. Ah! Queen to knight 4, right? Let me just make sure of this. Queen to knight 4. Rook on A to E1. Threatening H3. Candidate moves for white. Rook to D1 indeed. I need to check chat more often. Nope. I had an idea for another book over there, but I didn't see it. King H1. King H1. Believe it or not, this move I expect everybody to get, including Starkist. After all, this position is slightly in black's favor. Slightly, ever so slightly in black's favor. Now we're going to put a rook on the 7th rank. And we're going to keep the pressure on in this particular position, just trying to do our best. Now black does not fight for the open file with rook on A to D8. Black should do that, but instead plays so that after materialistic side is showing. And now candidate moves for white. Candidate moves for white. Ah, yeah, Rookie 5 or Rookie 7. That was delayed from the previous time. Thank you, Pegasus. Yes, there must be a delay. I believe there's a delay in you getting your moves across, so I'm going to try to give you an extra second or two from the time the bell goes off. That is a problem. So the comment is that black is pretty optimistic. Yeah, time delay. Exactly. I definitely don't have a delay on the stream, but I do realize there's a bit of a delay in the broadcast. But knight to d5 is planning on not only guarding the rook, but possibly bothering the queen, guarding these key squares, etc. And of course, bishop to b6. I'm not so sure about bishop takes b6, because we do have to watch out for our rook hanging. But after knight to d5, bishop takes c7 may well be forced. It may well be forced. Bishop takes, rook takes. Queen rook to king 1. Queen to knight 3. h6. Make certain that we're not on pinning. Candidates for white. Bishop takes b6, queen e7, bishop e5. Oh, I see what you're doing. No nonsense is giving me a sequence of moves. No nonsense is giving me a sequence of moves. And in reality, we're looking for 3 moves in this very position. For example, 3 different moves that can be compared as part of a tree of analysis. We basically established the branches first. What are the good branches that you might be willing to extend yourself upon? And then you will analyze a continuation from each of those moves. So, for example, in the previous position, I'm drawing a blank on the moves other than knight to d5, but bishop takes b6 was possible because after queen takes e7, bishop c5, or you may already be on it, and I'm just completely groggy, being that it's a Sunday. I am overdue for coffee indeed. Did I do candidate moves for white here? I didn't turn on the timer. We are very dry at the moment. That's all right. Time to hydrate. I don't know why she would include a knife with waffles. Yes. Good one, Pegasus. Another. Chair's bothering me. I tightened the screws or something. I think that's what the problem is. Between this and the next. Now, matching wits with Staunton, of course. Staunton did not play h4. In fact, he played the move that was perfectly reasonable. He actually goes in the other direction, opening up his king to possibilities of, you know, discovered checks and knight inclusions and everything. So after f4, queen to f5, white wins material in the straightforward fashion. Fairly certain that he plays this way. Nope, he did not play this way. When I'm going through a game, I often assume that he's going to go that way. Queen takes knight, queen takes rook. Silly me, queen takes bishop, taking advantage of a pin. Boy, was that a terrible one? No wonder I lost rating points today. Queen takes g6 indeed. Thank you, no nonsense. No wonder I lost rating points today. Tactically, I'm just not sharp today, like I was yesterday. Yesterday I went ridiculous amounts of games undefeated, including the match with Apostolate. Needless to say, oh, king h1, queen takes, setting a small trap, of course, against queen takes b. Finally has to defend against the threat, and once again the threat is rekindled. And it all came to a screeching halt. It all came to a screeching halt, as it's a forced mate for the most part. King h8, queen f6, king f7, queen takes, and mate. Or, of course, after queen f6, king to g8. Yeah, same thing. Queen takes f7 and queen to g8, mate. Now this book tends to move on, but we are going to include a game of pairs from the informant. The Encyclopedia Chess Miniatures, this edition is from the dawn of time through 2012, when I believe this was published. And the latest edition is going to go from 2013 to the present. So all the miniature games by the top players. So there are no Staunton games in Volume 2. But there are Staunton games here in Volume 1. So far, Staunton has been white in every single game. So in this particular miniature, got a very surprising opening, right? Knight f3, knight c6, d4, cd4, bishop c4, bishop b4 check. And now, once again, matching wits with Staunton and Starkist. Matching wits with Staunton as well as Starkist. Do I not have this one in my database? I do. I wonder if I have time to run and get a cup of coffee. Now again, these moves are not necessarily the best moves. But we will also give credit for Starkist's best moves. This position is better for black, according to Starkist, but by microscopic chances. Microscopic claims. So, queen to b3 again. Yes, 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 but black does have queen to e7. The most logical move, obviously, and is castles. And Pegasus came through with the third best move in the position. Bishop a3. Yeah, that castle. Castles. But of course, we have Howard Staunton on our hands, right? So e5 was played. And this is basically, I imagine, to keep black from playing knight f6. Or perhaps to circumvent him from playing d5 in this position. As it turns out, d5 is probably the best move. d5, queen takes d5, queen takes d5, bishop takes d5, is what informant believes at the time that it was published. But now we know. After d6, Staunton, sorry, here. After d6, Staunton goes for queen to b3. But knowing what we know now, d5 should have been played. That would have forced e takes d6. And after c takes d6, we can castle, try to take advantage of the openness of the king right away. So instead, after queen to b3, queen e7, castles for white, d takes e5, bishop a3. All of your moves are going to be made. Queen f6. e4 square cleared and yearning. And now candidate moves for white. and coffee. Candidate moves and coffee. I'll be right back. I'm going to know how long it takes me to get just coffee. So I take that back. I take out the earpieces. 45 seconds. All right, just coffee is a relative 3-minute run. Just coffee. 5 minutes probably for the facilities. Bishop takes f7 indeed. Kaploom. Kaplam. Kapow. What kind of idiot you wanted, Staunton? Where is my kapow? I have three different Twitch browsers, and they all have different things. Yes, bishop takes f7, knockout. It's very similar to Paul Morphy versus the Duke and the Count. Remember when Paul Morphy could have played queen takes f7? I'm sorry, bishop takes f7 followed by queen takes b7. It's the same thing. For those of you that don't recall that particular exercise, we'll show it briefly right after this. But rook to d8, queen takes c6, check. Bishop d7 to hunker down. And there are a lot of moves here. Staunton chooses queen to c5, gaining time on both the bishop and the pawn on e5. Bishop to b6. And then no nonsense's move, rook on a to e1. And life is very difficult for black at this very moment. He has only one move to try to stave off defeat, right? Well, he could have castled as well. Now, once again, we have a candidate move. Candidate moves for white. It is Staunton. You're absolutely right. There's, of course, Stockfish's move, and then there's Staunton's move. Mm-hmm. Indeed. And on the same vein, I actually thought about the other square for the knight as well. No nonsense. Now, of course, Stockfish believes that we should just capture the extra pawn and keep up the pressure and keep black from castling. Staunton does go knight e4, not necessarily because of knight d6, because if that were the only reason, then we could also probably play knight to c4 for the same effect. But interestingly enough, after the move knight e4, bishop to c6, there's literally almost, oh, I apologize. I can't say that. He drives him away this way. Since there's no defense. So there's really no defense at this point to knight e6. The king cannot escape the center. If queen to g6, then knight e6. They also consider rook to d5, queen to b8 check. And after king f7, queen takes h8. As the most destructive and decisive. Yep. Staunton for pair. Zydogorski. Finally a game with black. Odds of pawn and 2 moves. Wow, how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to need the editor. We're going to need the editor. Starting position. We're definitely going to need the editor. Pawn Pawn odds usually means that black is going to play without the f7 pawn, and that white is going to have these two moves in with black to play. And then I can edit the position, because we're going to be looking at it from black's perspective. This is Zydagorsky. And the game was played in London, April 1841. So black to move. Pawn and 2 moves odds. I've always thought about an arena with these types of odds as well. Not with the pawn odds, but everybody would be competing against the space advantage. It would take away the opening prep. So basically, black moves first, without the pawn odds. Instead of chess 960, right? Stretch indeed. Thank you, sir. Oh my God. I'm going to put back some of these books while I'm at it. This is precarious. I do have a Morphy book behind me for the Morphy possibility. Oh. I should have someone donate a certain number of bits for 1 hour Jacob Agard study stream, right? How am I going to get ready? Uh-oh. 6 minutes away. The Offerspiel Arena is 6 minutes away. Bummer. We're going to have to return to this, perhaps. But let's see what we can do. Let us see what we can do. So basically, Staunton plays e6 in this position. And after bishop to queen 3, c5. There's only one pawn to bishop 4 available. Pawn takes pawn. Queen to a5 check. Bishop takes f5 looks more natural. Compare game number 29. This is quite the hefty odds. Knight to e7. Is that true? Nah, that's not true. I mean, white is just clobbering black. Knight to e2, knight to king 2, bishop to queen 3. Castles. Knight to king bishop 3. a3. Ignoring white's cunning intentions by castling. And then candidate moves for black. Yes, exactly. Queen h5 and recaptures. Yeah, absolutely. So here we go. Candidates for black. Do I dare? Candidate moves for black. Now remember, we're not looking for the best move. We're looking for all of the good moves. And then we can analyze them a little bit more deeply. So you can already see that there could be at least one or two moves in this position that black could play, such as Queen e5, Queen h5. There is no f7 pawn. It was pawn and two moves odds. Believe it or not. Pawn and two moves odds. Bullying. Ng4. I don't know what that means. Indeed, Pegasus. Indeed. Bishop takes h2 check. King takes queen to rook 4 check. And knight to g5. And we actually get to see a smothered mate. Oh, I take that back. Sorry. A smothered mate happened. Oh, it's such a beautiful day here in New York. Very moist. Queen h5 and then knight g4. Exactly. Yeah, you got blocked. That was crazy. Let me just fix that name before I forget it. Zydagorsky. Actually, it was supposed to be Zydagorsky. And then while we can. Staunton versus Cochrane. Now, Cochrane was the one responsible for bringing the Indian players across, which introduced the fianchetto systems. Yes, Staunton versus Cochrane. It was blocked for bullying. It was very strange. I don't understand what ng4, unless there is something going on that we don't know about, right? So I had to add the permitted term, ng4. Maybe there's a gang out there like the Triad, like the Mafia, which are which are known as the ng4 group. Very strange, right? ng4, capital ng4. Oh, maybe it thought it was the other word beginning with the N's and G's in it. And they thought it was code for that. That would make sense. So Staunton Cochrane. Probably our last one of the day before I migrate over to the Opera Spiel arena. Bishop to c4, bishop to c5. knowing now what we know then, b4 is the order of the day. Bishop takes c3. Castles is less accurate. Everyone today knows that we have to play d4 first. Every Russian schoolboy knows that we have to play d4 first. But after castles, Cochrane comes up with the devious defensive try, and Black anticipates the discovery of Lasker's defense by 50 years in 1842. Now, of course, if d4, then Black can play d6. And after pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, White can regain his pawn, as in Chagor and Pillsbury, London, 1899. Or he can play for queen to b3, queen f6, bishop g5, queen to g6, bishop d5, and White and Black are doing a different dance that is holding. Oh, by the way, in the previous one, I missed explaining that tactic that we were doing. Let's go back to Staunton Popper for a moment. This was Staunton Popper, the Morphy versus the Duke and the Count, when so in this particular position, the bishop came out, and bishop takes f7 check was essayed, so that we could decoy him away from the defense of both of these pieces. The Morphy game that I was referring to, that everybody tries to improve upon, I need to restart my computer before I start this arena. I think I need to restart my computer. And now, after queen to b3, everyone and their brother knows that Paul Morphy could have improved on this position by playing bishop takes f7, bishop takes f7, and then queen takes rook. Would have been a butcher job for Black. But Paul Morphy chose to finish it the more elegant way in the Paris Opera House, which is how I feel when I'm doing things on stream. He preferred to play knight to c3, bishop g5, b5, and then we had the sack of time for material. We'll put that one in the notes. So Staunton Cochrane, we wouldn't have had that brilliancy without it. Staunton Cochrane continues. This game is also a relative miniature. This game could have been in the book. With it is Staunton Cochrane, right? or queen to b3. But instead, bishop to b6 is a good move, way ahead of his time. Bishop a3. We're going to make that the main line. As bishop to a3, d6, d4, pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, knight to f6, candidates for white. Yeah, basically after black plays queen to d7 or queen to e7, then if black had played queen to d7 instead of queen to e7, then bishop takes f7 would have been forced in the Morphy versus Staunton. Morphy versus Allies game. Several moves here leading to superior X. Yeah. Completely understandable. I do recommend the coordinates game. Somebody actually recommended the coordinates game the other day to increase the board vision, which is also important. I'm at my new high rating. Quite crazy. For Blitz, I didn't realize. It's always good. E5 indeed. Even though there are a lot of alternatives, E5 is the move that upsets the apple cart for black. Absolutely. E5, and after pawn takes pawn, now queen to b3. Queen d7. Oh, wow. This game reminds me of Steinitz versus Rock. We're going to see Steinitz versus Rock in this game as well. So this is a common theme. Pawn takes knight. And you can see how life is very difficult for black. Knight takes queen, rook to e1, check. Candidate moves for white. Exactly, opening up that diagonal. Candidate moves for white. 40 seconds. Almost 40 seconds. They actually have photographs of the Sultan Khan on the back of the Sultan Khan book. It's actually a real photograph. They actually have real photographs on the back of the Sultan Khan book. His games are not all that exciting, but he was very efficient. Super Potzer 2, how are you? Welcome back. It does, but it's not the strongest move in the position. There are two moves almost as strong. We're going over Howard Staunton's game, the English world champion. We obviously know that he wasn't necessarily the world champion. But no, the best move in the position, as agreed to by Starkist, is first and foremost to play pawn takes pawn. After all, white has sacrificed a queen. We can't just win more material. We sacrificed an entire queen. Is bishop takes f7 a fail? Let's go back. Given that we are down in material and we're only getting the queen back, our rook is hanging on a1. Let's just do some accounting here. White does have 4 minor pieces to black's 3. Yeah, it would be bad. So therefore, the other moves were bishop to b4 check and bishop a3 check. Not too many choices there. But it was interesting that the knight move was very enticing for mate. Very enticing for mate. Knight to e5 threatened checkmate. So I think that should have been an alternative. Unfortunately, black can just give back the queen. Or the pieces, anyway. So, after pawn takes pawn, rook to g1, bishop f6, the queen now has to block. That is, of course, if we could still survive this. Staunton's beautiful queen sacrifice secured the gain of a piece in every variation. Yeah. And going back to bishop to b4, c3, bishop a5. We'll go with is this true? Castles, bishop to b6. No, it's not that move order. I apologize. Hold the phone here. Steinitz rock. Oh, I've taken from the other move order. Steinitz rock was actually from d4. E takes d4. Castles. And if black plays knight f6, this was Steinitz rock. Bishop to a3, trying to keep him from attacking. And Steinitz rock was this move. Pawn takes pawn. Knight a5, rook a1, rook e1 check. This is what we were doing. like so. That's Steinitz rock. Very similar. F takes G7 indeed, Super Patzer. So when we have this particular position with queen to b3, pawn takes pawn, knight a5, I immediately thought of the same concept of black's king being in the center. Staunton Cochrane, 1842. Exactly. So yeah, that other game with Staunton and Rock, I'm sorry, Steinitz and Rock, I usually show often. It's not short enough to make the great big book of miniatures, but it was quite incredible. I am going to have to restart in order to go to the online league Super Blitz Arena. And I will be back to stream that in just a moment. More than likely. Let me just close this. And I don't know what many of you might think of this, but it is time, honestly. Just Cochrane. In the meantime, I'm going to leave you in good hands for just a moment. As he's covering something. Nice charity match. And that way, we've started our follower goal over again. We'll be on our way. I will be right back as soon as I restart my computer. Pegasus, thank you so much. So awesome to see you guys. Cheers, guys. Please spam our emotes in that chat. Dimpool, wait a minute. Never too late to give a shout out, if I can spell it properly. Dimpool. Oh, let's do it that way. Ron Hay Rock. Ron Hay Rock indeed. Cheers, guys. Ciao, and I'll be back.